Mr. Sandman.
Clearly, you're doing something before the start.
Oh man. Yep. I clearly wasn't ready for this thing to start recording. Thankfully, I still had that song in my head.
Yep.
So this game came up.
And it makes sense.
Look here, man. Sometimes you just can't leave well enough alone. In the case of Hollywood, you can never leave well enough alone. You just gotta keep on cashing in. And here's the thing about Halloween 1. Made tons of money.
Yep.
You know, it cost virtually nothing to make.
True.
Literally, they pimped a guy named Nathan out.
Yeah,
Got butt raped for days, but they funded the movie, so it was all good.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, make tons of money, and they decided it's time for us to make another one. Here's the thing, that was not the intentions of John Carpenter. He was like, yo, I don't want to make another one. If we're gonna make more, can we make this like a fucking anthology series? Which would have been dope, but arguably would have not worked either because people are just intent on getting more of the same.
And then complaining about getting more of the same.
Yeah, what is this? Anyway, that's what people do, so whatever. In the end, we ended up getting Halloween 2. And subsequently, we ended up getting 1 million Halloweens after that. Halloween, look, Halloween 2, if you want to finish off the story started in part 1, then it's a movie that can give you that. It's not going to give it to you as well as part 1, not remotely as well as part 1, but it'll give you something of a semblance of an ending. Not that you needed one, because part 1 gives you the ending that should have been there. But if you're the type of guy that wants to see the bad guy get shot to death or blown up or whatever, then I guess you can go the extra step. It's unnecessary filler.
Yeah,
the movie.
It's like DLC. It's like the ending digipack for Halloween 1.
Yeah, really. So we're talking about Halloween 2. More of the night he came home. Actual tagline, by the way.
Seriously?
And I mean, I guess that's all it is. It picks up literally right after the end of the first one. It even recaps the end for you and then dramatically shifts and it lets you know immediately that these people, despite it just having been 2 years afterwards, somehow look different enough for it to be a problem the whole movie.
Yeah, no shit.
Like, don't get me wrong. I mean, we understand as moviegoers that that's the thing that happens. But I don't know what it is. I would have rather them look 100% different than they just look just a smidgen overpassable.
Yeah, like Loomis is a little bit bigger.
Yeah.
He's got like different facial hair color. It looks fake for some reason, the facial hair.
Yeah. Of course, JLC's calf game still sucks.
Yeah.
But she very notably is wearing a wig because she didn't have the requisite long hair. Now, that's fine. The wig's not great at all, but it passes. Here's the problem with the wig. It's not even the right length.
I know. It's completely different hair.
Or color. So, what the fuck? You know, even Michael Myers doesn't look the same because they got a new actor to portray him. Yeah. And he has a completely different body language. He's taller, so he's high-watering the whole fucking time. Dude, I can't stop looking at the high water pants.
I wasn't mentioning the high waters. In fact, I was mentioning something else, which I'm sure we're going to mention. Sponsored by Mars Candy, by the way.
Yes.
But this homie's high watering straight Chavo el Ochoing the whole time.
Yeah, and his body language is completely different to the original body language. Again, that's not necessarily a deal breaker if we're talking about these type of masked slasher types. Just look at Jason. He switched a million times. And there's great Jasons and there's okay Jasons and there's bad Jasons. But the complaint is never like, he's not getting it right in this. This guy just... the saunter is so stark different.
Yeah.
And the fact that it picks up directly after the other, it's kind of like... It sticks out.
It's like,
and it just adds to that tapestry of everything being just a little off with the characters that continue.
He's like tons slower, but somehow with like none of the menace.
Yeah, or the suspense behind it.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that he always holds his little weapon like this.
Yeah, it's like an old guy wearing holding a weapon.
Yeah.
And of course, the biggest thing when it comes to Myers is that you immediately notice a problem with the mask. Now, just to be clear, before anybody says it, because you know those Halloween fans are fucking gonna get on you, we understand that's actually the exact same mask.
Yes.
It was tucked away into some fucking, cabinet. I'm sorry, a drawer and a desk somewhere. They actually took it out. I'm pretty sure latex being flattened in a drawer also had a little bit to do with it. But I think mostly what had to do with it was the fact that Homeboy's head, Homeboy's, Homeboy's head was about this big.
Oh God! This is actually that guy's head, dude.
Yeah, you don't know it, but Dick Warlock's fucking. This is an actual life cast of his skull. That's right, he's dead somehow. Yeah, man. This this cat's head is a straight up like fucking M&M for Tyrannosaurus Rex, man. It's big.
That shit is the size of Beetlejuice.
Yeah, it's huge, dude.
And a star.
I knew the star. Yeah, it stretches the mask.
Oh man.
To like disproportionate size width-wise.
Yeah.
So he looks
like
odd.
William Shatner.
He actually looks like more like William Shatner here than you would imagine.
Yes.
Again, this would not be an issue if overall the issues as a whole in this movie didn't compound into a problem. One thing being wrong, two things being wrong, three things being wrong even. Not an issue if the movie as a whole gels well. So
Oh boys. Oh my! Oh, you saved that for like the best time.
So look, man. Here's the problem with Halloween 2. The problem with Halloween 2 is, one, immediately you notice the absence of John Carpenter.
Yeah.
Now, John Carpenter did co-write this script with Deborah Hill, who produced the first one. And you can see how, if you're familiar with Carpenter style, you can see how differently he would have directed scenes. There's scenes where you're like, that scene would have worked had it been directed by Carpenter.
I think so much of this movie you could see that with.
Yeah. As a result of Rick Rosenthal, and I'm not throwing Rick Rosenthal under the fucking bus here, I'm just saying that he didn't know how to make that material work the bulk of the time. So it comes off as slightly incompetent. And when compared to the first one, grossly incompetent at times. Now, there's been more incompetent Halloween movies, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying comparatively to the first one.
Yeah.
There are scenes that work. They're few, and they usually work for only a limited amount of time.
Yeah.
But there are scenes that work. And mostly what, for me, strikes a decent chord in this is that there are concepts here that work. That, again, in better hands would have been cool. I also think that John Carpenter, we know John Carpenter a lot more as his career, grew. And he doesn't really give a fuck about anything that he's not directly involved in. Mm-hmm. Sometimes he doesn't give a fuck about things he's directly involved in. Like Ghost of Mars. Once they took away the movie from him, he didn't fucking care, really. You know what I'm saying? He couldn't care. They fucked it.
Yeah.
So he had to make some half-ass shit. He quit right after that movie. That's how much he was like disappointed in that. After that, he's produced remakes of his work, and he didn't care.
Yeah.
He didn't show up to the set. He didn't give a flying fuck. Now, I'm pretty sure...
He infamously didn't care that it was so, to the point that it was a big deal when he came back for the recent Halloween.
Mm-hmm.
People were like, holy shit, he's actually endorsing this?
Yeah, it's kind of a thing for Carpenter to not give a shit about something he's not directly involved in as a director. Now, I'm not saying that he was like, fuck this movie, because he was involved in this movie because he figured I might as well try to salvage it from complete disaster. So he did contribute to the screenwriting, But I'm almost 100% sure that while not to the cynical levels of his later life, he let Rosenthal and company do what they did. Now, a lot of the crew came back. A lot of the cast that did return were the same people. So there's that. Dean Cundey does come back for the photography, but and it's competent. Don't get me wrong. Although with this scan, this. By the way, this is a 4K scan, and it doesn't look good.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I thought it was just me, but yeah, it didn't. It looked like a DVD almost.
Yeah, it's not a good scan, and you can tell that they didn't bother to consult with Cundey about color correction and stuff like that. But anyway, his competent photography, very competent photography, under the wrong guidance, I mean, it's just there. You know what I'm saying? Under the wrong direction, it can only do so much. It can't salvage everything. In fact, it can't salvage much. So the photography is fine, except that the direction is not up to par at all. The acting in this is uneven throughout. I think one of the major issues with this movie, correct me if I'm wrong here, is that it focuses on the wrong people.
Yes, big time.
Instead of focusing on Laurie for the bulk of this and Michael in the right way, because Michael plays off of Laurie and having people come in the way because of that, and instead of focusing more on Loomis as well, you know, the three core centric characters.
Yeah, the ones that had like the main credits in the damn movie.
Yeah, it chooses to introduce you to a new crop of characters. People that, granted, are filling the hallways of a hospital where Laurie is taken after the events of part one. Fine. It's good to get to know at least a little bit of the characters, but this is a direct continuation.
Yeah.
And the only remaining characters we're familiar with, because this is a direct continuation, are the ones you don't choose to focus on.
It also doesn't help that the new characters
stink.
You beat me to it, but I was gonna try to build it up. Like, can only be described as hella stinky.
Yeah, these characters are basement level trash.
You know, like when you see a character that you know is gonna die,
mm-hmm.
and thus you're like, I don't care about this character.
Yeah.
That's every single character in this movie.
Yeah, they're all cannon fodder, and not interesting cannon fodder, not sympathetic cannon fodder. In fact, some of them are grossly unlikable.
Yes.
And
not in a way where you're like, I want to see him die. And
yeah, they're just annoying.
You're just like, serious? Just die already. Like Plutarch, who only you will get who that is.
Yeah, some of these characters are just... Maybe it was intentional to make them disposable characters, but really they just come off as annoying because we spend so much time around them. There are two EMTs that take Laurie from the scene of part one to the hospital. One of them an older one, another a younger one. The older one is supposed to be crude and brash, but he's just an annoying turd.
And he's the only one that gets built up as a character that you want to see die.
Yeah.
You know, like as a hell yeah, he's going to get his comeuppance. But then he just, the death sucks. He just gets choked out in the background.
Yeah, and no, granted, a background death could work. It's just not shot the way Carpenter would have shot it. You know, the photography's there, but the direction is not. So it looks kind of fucking clumsy.
I think the fact that this movie is so different, like in the way it in everything basically, you kind of have to talk about some of the kills because a lot of them take.
Oh, like, that's its own focus.
It builds it up as a kill movie basically.
Yeah. Well, and we'll talk about that because that's a big issue. But yeah, these characters are just so deplorably awful and/or vacuous, empty nothings that you just see as cannon fodder. And it's just a waste of time being around these people, and we spend so much time around them. Again, that one annoying ass EMT guy, no redeeming factors, no point in him being in this thing other than he got killed. The other EMT guy is a fucking like creep. Like he's supposed to be kind of sympathetic in the sense that he gives a shit about Laurie's well-being, but he literally picked her up from, the scene of a crime, basically,
Yeah.
and is all of a sudden like swooning over
Super
her.
creeping on her, yeah.
Yeah, creeping on her, slipping into her room and being like, yeah, baby. Well, not like that, but he's like, I'm going to take care of you, make sure that it's kind of weird.
He's like nice guying her.
Yeah,
Like,
but
big
it's
time.
like creepy,
Yeah.
clingy, nice guy. And then again, it's all for naught. This reminds me a lot of the character in Hellraiser 2, you know, that's around Kirsty at the hospital. He came out of fucking nowhere, and all of a sudden he's like all about Kirsty, except that guy at least had something to contribute to the development of other characters. He sucked, and he shouldn't have been in the movie, but through him we got to see interesting stuff. And also he had that line, Jesus.
Oh yeah, it's classic.
But this guy, who is that equivalent of that type of character, he contributes nothing to the fucking movie.
I was expecting, like, cause I hadn't seen this in forever. I was expecting him to like his character to lead somewhere.
Nope.
It does lead to something, but what it leads to, you're like, this is Kaka, really?
Yeah.
He just sucks? That's what it was leading up to? I knew that from the beginning. You didn't have to build up his suck factor.
He's a suck fest, indeed. And okay.
There's a scene in specific, in case you're wondering who Plutarch is, there's a scene in specific where there's a security guard, and it's like this prolonged, like, tense scene where you know a kill's coming, but it's building up. And when done right, it's cool, right? Like, the first one has a lot of that. This one, it was so incredibly uninteresting. It was just kill him already.
It was
like 50 hours of this fat guy walking. And yes, I know I'm fat before anybody says it, but it's 50 hours of this fat guy walking around with a flashlight. And I was like, die!
Yeah, dude. And you dubbed him Plutarch.
Yeah, I called
that's
him
the
Plutarch.
origin of that. But anyway, yeah, look, yeah, that's absolutely right. What the fuck was that? You know, people complain about jump scares sucking balls nowadays and all those old movies. Look, Halloween 2 is regarded very well in some circles, and it's just jump scares, and they all are horribly pulled off. There's jump scares in the first one, but Carpenter and company managed to build up so much suspense that you hardly realize that there's only 3 deaths in the movie.
Yeah.
This one has 10 deaths, and you're like, oh my god, get to it already!
Yes.
Because it's so incompetently paced, put together. There's literally a cat jumping out of something at this point. You know, that old cliche? Literally a cat.
Yep.
The only thing that would have made it more cliche is if it was out of a cupboard. You know, so all that shit that people complain about, it's in this movie. This is a perfect example of how Carpenter and company in the first one set up what would eventually be a lot of tropes, but they did them right. And here, immediately almost, everybody does them wrong.
Yeah, this is like instantly it's a slasher movie and not much more.
Yes, which is great because you brought that up earlier, and let's talk about that. There's nothing wrong with a movie taking a different avenue to tell the story. After all, the core awesome story of part 1 was technically already told. So this could have been the return of the king of the two, where we just get a bunch of cool kills.
Yeah.
But this thing just went straight up slasher mode on us. You know, forget the fact that Michael pretty much just killed with one implement. Here he picks up another knife at the beginning, but then decides to make some vague statement, which, by the way, that statement was rolled into absurdity in the later movies. You know, he makes this vague statement that I'm sure in this movie by itself was supposed to add a sense of mystical allure, because all the allure had been taken out of him by the fact that he's now still on the loose, and we're seeing it. So they try to add that allure again under Carpenter. That would have worked. Here it's just like, why did he do that? Okay, I guess he's involved with some druid shit, whatever. Anyway, here he gets that implement of destruction again, a knife, and he could have kept it, but he had to make that vague statement, and they had to leave the knife there. So from that point on, he Jasons it.
Yeah.
And this is before Jason. Well, yes, before Jason, quote unquote. And, he Jasons it. He kills people in different ways.
Yes.
And if this would have been established from the get-go, he didn't have his knife. If we just went from there, that'd be fine. But he got his knife. He went out of his way to leave it, so it just comes off as purposeful. I'm gonna give you quote unquote different creative quote unquote kills, which
Stinky.
they're not creative. There's some that again kind of work. The steam room sequence kind of works, or I shouldn't say steam room, hot tub thing sequence.
Yeah, which
kind of works.
Which is funny because that's like the most. I even said it when it happened. I was like, "This is straight up slasher kill."
Yeah,
But at least it's visually interesting. Like it looks kind of cool. The effect.
Yeah, and even it's 2 kills in that particular sequence. Again, the first half of it is incompetent. The second half is a little better. Altogether, it kind of works, but you could see it easily being much more of a better scene under other more capable hands. There's parts that kind of work that way, but for the most part, we get ridiculous nonsense kills.
Yeah.
Like, why would Michael go out of the way to drain someone's blood?
Yeah, like carefully insert this little thing into the vein and then let it pour out.
Yeah. Like, okay, fine. It doesn't take long to do that. You will bleed out if you do that. But he strapped the person down to a gurney. Why not just kill the motherfucker? Why do you have to drain his blood out? It just makes no sense. There's people that just spontaneously are shown as dead, like the director of the hospital.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of comes out of nowhere, like, oh yeah, that was a guy, right?
That does lead to kind of like a kind of cool moment, which is just like a rehash of the part in the first one, where like the nurse is looking for him and he kind of creeps out from the darkness. That looked kind of cool.
Yeah, and that's good. That's great because again, that first part of that,
Stinky,
where the nurse finds a doctor and Michael has killed him, and you're like, oh yeah, that was a guy, I guess.
That shows up once.
That doesn't work. But the second half, when Michael disposes of her, works. So you're like left in this murky in the middle space. And I think that really defines this movie. There's so much negative that the positives contrast just enough to leave you in this murky space. You know what I'm saying? If you just had refocused, this would have been a much better movie. Now, again, some concepts work. I like the ending of this movie. Again, it's clumsy, and under better direction, it would have been better. But I do like the ending of this movie, the final confrontation, if you will. Once Laurie actually begins to do something, they literally knock her out for a whole fucking entirety of the movie.
It completely disappears for most of the movie.
Yeah, so that ending is fine, and just shows you that even if it hadn't been a person as competent as Carpenter, had you focused on these characters, there would have been a lot more interest in this picture because the characters we got stunk.
I think the biggest failure, like in the movie, it falls under that too, is the fact that Loomis gets like 1 second of screen time and they don't give him any cool lines really. There was actually one, I don't remember exactly which one, but there was actually one that made me go, what? Not because it was bad, but because there was like no context to it. And like again, he doesn't do his part like in the first one where he builds up this mystique or anything. You're just kind of like, this is a guy, isn't it?
Yeah,
and he's trying and he works. But it's unfortunate that he didn't get enough.
I think he only works at the beginning, at the end. In the middle, he doesn't get a lot to do.
Yeah.
And when you do see him in the middle, he's just kind of harping on what he started with. But at the beginning and the end, he kind of works. At the beginning, because he's reacting to what we immediately just saw. Yeah. But to assume that he would continue to react, overtly as he does, is kind of anti-Loomis, given what we experienced in the first one. Why would he continue to be a frantic, panicked guy, to that level? There'd be a little bit more chill in him as shit progressed. A little bit more worry rather than outright panic. So it's kind of weird. It feels like they're just filling the air when he's there. So that sucks. But at the beginning, it makes sense. And they touch on an interesting idea, the town reacting to it.
Yeah.
But then they don't ever go back to that.
Yeah.
And you're like, what the fuck?
That is something I kind of liked in the beginning. There is this kind of feeling of chaos in the town.
Yes.
Like, it actually feels like people are reacting to what happened and stuff.
Which we rarely see in horror movies.
Yeah, which is cool, you know. And you see the cops, and they're kind of like little characters in it, and then they completely disappear, and the town completely disappears.
And we go to this hospital.
Horrifyingly uninteresting other plot.
Yes.
Which sucks. It's like, I would have rather seen, like, the cops, even though one of them was kind of a crap-ass actor. Would have rather seen them in the town, because that was way more interesting than this turd.
Yeah, the idea of an entire town in panic while something is out there on the loose is an excellent one, and they abandon it completely.
Yeah, big time.
There's also scenes that make you, if you think about them, you're like, the fuck? You know, they know that Michael's on the loose.
Oh man, classic.
It's
also one of the best scenes, I'm not gonna lie.
It's comically great. They know that Michael's on the loose. The cops are now kind of like listening to Loomis, and Loomis spots a guy amidst the trick-or-treating crowd that is wearing pretty much Michael's outfit.
Yeah.
Now, off the cuff, you got to realize that that's... Unless this was an outfit that was a thing, which it wasn't, it's established that Michael stole his mechanic suit from a mechanic.
Yeah.
So I get someone wearing a mask because he stole that too.
Even though the mask was different, it was blonde.
Yeah, you know, but we see that, you know, we see cheap masks come in 1,000 colors. I get the mask, but the suit also. Anyway, Loomis spots some guy that's...
And for some reason, he's also walking like a serial killer.
Yeah, and doesn't talk. Doesn't stop when they tell him to stop. Nothing. So he assumes it's Michael. He's going to try to shoot him. And the cop that's with him frantically trying to stop him. But then the cop, out of fucking nowhere, just eschews procedure and slams into him, into this guy dressed like Michael Myers, basically. Slams into and slams his corpse into a van.
He's already dead when he hits him, because this guy was going at like 9,000 Mach speeds.
Yeah.
That's right. Can count 9,000 of them.
Yeah, dude, he slams... Not only does he fucking murk this fool the moment he hits him, but he slams the fucker into a damn van, and then he explodes for some fucked reason.
It shows a little corpse.
And then he's burning. And, again, as ridiculous as that scene is, and especially the more you think about it, that would have been an interesting avenue to take if they had just focused on the town panic and the cops, like you say, because it would have been interesting to see the fallout of somebody having killed a kid, basically, instead of Michael Myers.
I even jokingly said I want to spin off of that cop who killed this kid, but really that would have been way more interesting than the plot we got.
Yeah, the hospital plot, staff and shit like that. Like, we could have, like, made those characters razor thin, focused on the town shit, on the sheriff and the cop shit, and then gone at the end back to the hospital.
I also think it would have added so much to Michael's, you know, creepy factor if just with that it would have completely destroyed the town. You know, like, that could have been the start of the freaking kid dying, and then everything's just falling apart just because of what he did.
Yeah.
But no, they just abandoned it.
Yeah, and it's a shame. It's a shame because you could have really worked something unique with those angles. Instead, what we get is something that unfortunately became the status quo in a lot of slasher films that followed it. The generic, bullshit, uninteresting, horrible characters that you just want to see die because they suck, not because they deserve it or something. And that's what we get for the bulk of this movie. So for whatever functions, you're still bogged down by tons of trash, basically. Give me something, man. Any thoughts you want to add aside from what we just talked about?
I think if I have to give some praise, like I don't hate it, but I'm having a hard time praising it in any way, because though there is good stuff, there's too much bad, and there's too much that is just wasted.
Yeah.
That I can't, really give it much praise. That being said, I do think the theme is kind of cool. It's like this kind of remixed little theme in the beginning. I was like, that's pretty cool. I'll give that a little plus. That's it.
The opening, which of course is a nod to the opening in Halloween, as in the credit crawl is what we're talking about. They do something pretty cool with it here.
Yeah.
That's neat. Again, the cool concepts that are cool do stand out. In fact, they stand out because compared to the shit that's in it, they just make you want more of the stuff that's cool. So you're like, well, I guess we're not getting that.
Also, the fact that later on you find out that the guy that got run over and blown up was the dude that Laurie.
Oh yeah. This guy that literally got rammed for. He was wearing the Michael Myers outfit somehow, wearing the exact same outfit. That guy got killed and blown up.
Yep.
Turns out to be the guy that Laurie liked in the first one. Never noticed that before this watching.
It was hilarious though.
But that just made it kind of funnier.
Yeah.
Also, his corpse didn't look like any corpse I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
I recognize that he was burned to a crisp, but no human looks like that.
Nope.
But anyway, the effects, they range from okay to downright not functional, dysfunctional as fuck. Again, they could have been much worse, but there's just stuff that's like low rent looking. You know what I'm saying? Low fucking rent looking.
It's interesting you say that because throughout the whole movie, I don't know. I'm just gonna say it. It feels kind of cheap, like visually, and I'm not talking about the effects, just the movie as a whole.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because the first one managed to make it not feel cheap, despite it being cheap, to make. This one, I'm assuming they had a lot more money.
Yeah, and it was a studio film.
And yet it feels considerably cheaper, shoddier, like just kind of like something they threw together.
Yeah. It's definitely something that plagues the movie. That being said, I gotta ask, based on your initial impression of this movie, which was outright hatred, would you say it at least marginally improved in your point of view? Or is it still in the basement hatred level?
I don't think I hate it as much. I do feel a lot of the same stuff though. Like I think the biggest feeling after we saw it originally was that seemed very, very unnecessary.
Yeah.
And it does cheapen. I mean, if you're gonna take in this as canon in your head, it does cheapen the character a lot.
Yeah.
You're kind of like,
absolutely.
Ugh. So I hated it the first time because of that, and I was like, that sucked. I don't think I hate it, but I definitely don't like it.
Yeah.
I think some stuff works, like you said, but it's shoddy. It's a shoddy movie.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate it though. I mean, it's a movie. I had some fun watching it. Like sometimes I wanted it just to end because it was going on too long.
The hospital sequences.
Yeah, but some stuff was funny. Like I wanted Plutarch to die, and he did, so that was cool.
So yeah, man, Halloween 2, it's a movie that exists, and sometimes that's all we can say about it. Now, this is a movie that I own. Of the original series, I have the movies that I want, 1, 2, and 3. And this one, I didn't buy until I saw this for $10. So that's why I bought it. Otherwise, I would have waited until forever for it to get to a reasonable price. And really, the only reason $10 was fine with me because this is a Scream Factory release. And
damn, Scream gotta fix her. This scan stunk.
Yeah, this scan was not good, and it has the television cut and the 4K scan that's not great. And so it's bound to have features and all that stuff. So that was a good enough reason for me to pay for it. Otherwise, I would have not gotten it. But yeah, sometimes I have to have something in my collection, and 1, 2, and 3 are what I would consider the essentials for me.
Carpy was
that
involved.
Being said, in a world where this never happened, where this wasn't $10, it would have remained at 1 and 3. And that's that. And that's kind of always been my stance. But like you, it's a movie that, I don't hate. And on occasion, I'll be like, I kind of feel like watching it. Here's the thing. Controversial opinion here. Halloween 2 from Rob Zombie kind of reworks the idea that this hospital scenario and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah, it does.
I thought he did that way more competently than this movie fucking did. The sequences in that work phenomenally compared to this. But Yeah, man. There's stuff again. There's stuff in here. There's more like images that really work. Some of them you mentioned, him walking out of the fire. While the image doesn't work, it's clearly a burn suit. The idea is really good. Him walking through the door.
This is very much a clearly photoshopped image.
That's not how it looks in the movie.
His head is somehow smaller than the rest of the movie.
Yeah, no shit. There's images that stand out more than anything. You touched upon some of them, some of the shots, stuff like that. But it touches nothing that Carpenter did. And that's a real shame. Because, like you say, the ultimate thing that this thing does that's fucked is it cheapens that character.
Yeah.
So anyway, let's give a score, again, relative to its kin. You gave Halloween a 9. I did as well. What do we give this one? Take it away, Johnny.
I think if you compare it to the rest of the movies... it's still better than most of the Halloween movies.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, it's not a good movie. I'll give it like factoring in fun factor here too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna give it like a 3.
Okay.
If I'm being honest, I think if you're in the right mood, you can have some fun. But for the most part, it's just kind of a waste.
Agreed. I think there's great concepts, great ideas in this, and some indelible imagery, but that does not a movie make. And like you say, there's a lot of wasted opportunities, and that's what really gets me about this movie. What could have been, even, and this I can take a jab at Carpenter for, because he wrote the script. Why didn't you write a script where you focused on this thing instead of that thing, you know? And he, of all people, could have really focused on the town and the kind of like town under siege aspect of it.
Yeah.
Because he's the guy that wrote Assault on Precinct 13.
And like and Prince of Darkness.
I mean, like, what the fuck? Why didn't you do that? Maybe he didn't give a shit that much. I don't know.
For whatever they pushed for it to be more of a
yeah, there's always that. We know the Akkads, which produced these, were very pushy about what they wanted in these movies.
Dino?
And Dino, well, yeah, Dino De Laurentiis also produced this. So, but Mustafa Akkad and company have always had a stranglehold on Halloween.
Yeah.
In fact, his son overlooked the sequels, and Rob Zombie cited that being a severe issue, that they just wanted, fucking slasher fodder. So maybe that was it. I don't know, but the point is, there's a lot of lost promise, and I'm gonna have to mirror a 3. So anyway, there you have it. Halloween 2, the sequel that lets you down. More
like Halloween poo.
Yeah, no shit, man.
We didn't even drop a freaking Mookie reference. This is how
it's no Mookie. But we're gonna leave you with this.
Damn, homie.
With this bad boy right here, because it's more interesting than the movie. Hit like, share, subscribe, and the notification buttons, and because we're wrapped.